Changing Your Life with Beck Saswani and Chris Massey for Sculpt and Flow.
Proudly sponsored by Align Accounting, Newcastle's fresh approach to accounting, and Sage Painting, Newcastle's award-winning painting company. So, my partner Chris and myself have been working in, let's say, fitness / wellness for a combined effort of maybe over about 50 years or something, which makes me suddenly feel rather old. But anyway, we have a lot of experience, the pair of us, in working in different facilities, and I would say in quite a one-dimensional plane, you know, just teaching, for example, or coaching, whether it's strength or whether it's yoga or what it might be, you know, in that regard. And it took us time, but we got there to kind of go, hey, look, why don't we join our efforts together? We're both very passionate about all over body health and what facilitates that. And on a physical level, that then got us talking about sharing. Could we create an approach to training and an offering to people that gave them an option of a very specific and individualized program that would incorporate strengthening, obviously really important for bone density, etc., flexibility and mobility, obviously that comes in with the yoga, and core strength, which is sort of my most passionate area of expertise in the Pilates. But so these three kind of movement modalities coming together, and as those areas have evolved and meshed with different clients, which will be different from person to person, because obviously everybody's different and their lifestyle will be different and the time they've got, etc., etc. What has been really noticeable and apparent with our programming is the mental and emotional support and coaching that we provide within these very individualized programs. And that side of it has really soared, is the best word I can use to describe it, for us to really help people to work through, navigate what they're going through off of the mat and put it into a movement system where they're able to move through it, under it, on it, all over it, so they can help shift and move through energy in this way, no matter what modality they're working in. And that came through Sculpt and Flow Fitness, which is really about Chris being the sculpting side and me being the flow side. It's navigated its way into this real kind of flow state, I would say, that we are trying to help people find a state of flow, mental and physical flow in their lives. And so was born the idea of our podcast, which is along the lines of changing your life with Sculpt and Flow Fitness, and how these individualized programs that I've mentioned have helped different clients really change their life, depending particularly on what they're navigating. And I hope that you'll be able to hear how each one is so unique. It is very unique and personalized depending on the particular client, the particular person. So that leads me into welcoming you very warmly to this very first episode in season 1 of Changing Your Life with Sculpt and Flow Fitness with April Howard. And April, other than just being awesome, is the producer and co-director of Voices of the Pacific and the co-founder of Rolling Ball Productions. And this podcast today, I'm going to be talking to April about how she followed her heart with Sculpt and Flow Fitness and how that has helped her navigate really into where she's going with her productions at the moment. We talk a little bit about her coaching calls that helped her stay on track overseas, how we've helped her unlock her upper back and her back of heart to help her get out of fight or flight.
No matter where you are on the planet or how hectic your schedule is, Sculpt and Flow can be your partner in fitness and flow anywhere around the world. Reach out now, sculptandflow.com.au.
Sculpt and Flow's first podcast season. You are number one. You're it. Actually, that's a popular phrase, isn't it? You are it. So, yeah, how are you doing?
I'm good. I've just driven back from Victoria yesterday with my mum, actually.
Okay.
After investing in a new car, which is my first new car in over a decade. And, I've been lucky enough to have a few days at home with family, and now I've just come back and I've got to get back to work. So just needed a couple of weeks off after a bit of a busy time over the last 6 months, which I'm sure we'll cover.
Yeah, we will. We'll get there indeed. It's been an epic journey, and we'll get to that point. Would you mind if we start, especially with, obviously I know a little bit about your background, or a lot, and how you found Sculpt and Flow in the first place. Would you elaborate on that for people who don't know you or know any of your journey with us, just how you came to find us, I guess, in the first place, and how you felt at that initial junction, that threshold where maybe you found us, and then that step of, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to trust it and go with these guys.
Absolutely. And I made sure I spent time considering how to answer this, because it's really significant. In a summary, it's actually 3 years ago that I joined Sculpt and Flow for the first time.
Yeah.
And we were in the scenario where we were still in that post-COVID fallout, and our business had really suffered greatly because we're in that visual media space. So Rolling Ball is a film and content company, and because people couldn't be in the same space, we effectively had a major shift in how much work we could do and those type of things. And what goes with that, being a small business owner, is a whole lot of stress and an impact. Okay. And I came back we actually spent some time in another part of the state. We went bush, went out into the rural part of the hinterland up near Lismore.
Awesome. And
when I came back to Newcastle, knowing we had to sort of rebuild and get back to work, I think I Googled something in the space of not just movement but mindset, because I knew I was going to need both to rebuild myself and or the company and or, all of it, because it was such a significant time. And I know I was only one of many that experienced that. But it was a serious kind of consideration about, what do I do here? Health had been impacted, carrying extra pounds, probably both physically and metaphysically. And so I Googled something in that space. And I think the first meeting wasn't too long after inquiring, and I went and I caught up with Chris in a one-on-one.
Yeah.
And there were a few things he said that really landed for me. One of them was the fact that you've both been in this industry for so long, and that a lot of other PTs seem to sort of come in and leave again, but you'd both come from somewhere else. You had worked in other parts of Australia as well. And so you were a newer resident in Newcastle. Like myself, I didn't grow up here.
Yeah.
And, spoke about wisdom, I think, and experience. And that one of the things, and I hope it's okay to quote Chris, but there'd be no protein shakes in your studio. And that resonated for me, because I knew I was going to need something more than just movement coach.
Yeah,
so,
but it was deeper, a lot deeper than that.
It was.
Yeah. And can I ask, was it that initial meeting with Chris where you navigated your way into what disciplines or modalities that you wanted to train in? Or was that, so for example, when you started with us, did you know, okay, I want to do yoga, my PT, and then obviously with us, we've worked on a lot of coaching calls. So again, for those who, just to keep people up to speed who are listening, with April, part of our process is we have regular coaching catch-ups, because April is away a lot with work and seeing family, etc. So if she can't get into the studio, then physically, then we catch up via coaching calls, which is a big part of our kind of program with you, I guess, is a good way to say it. Did you envisage it happening like that? Or would you say it's kind of evolved as you've evolved and as you keep kind of, well, I hope you don't mind me using the word, well, I say reinventing, but it's also getting back, it's reinventing, but it's getting back to who you were in the first place.
That's right.
Did you think it was going to work out that way, or did you plan it like that? Is it just kind of progressed as you've been with us, as you said, for nearly 3 years?
I think that one of the things that was clear on even your website was that yoga was going to be available if I was to be in your community. Chris quickly identified that there was a need for both cardio and strength building because of probably where my mindset was.
Yeah.
And then to think I've had some chapters in my life where yoga's been quite significant, and every time I go back to that mat, and I will be honest and say I haven't necessarily nailed the discipline yet, but every time I go back to the mat, I go, thank you, like I've come home again. And it's having been a gymnast earlier in my life, that movement and flexibility, let alone the full, I guess, circular thing that yoga can bring you as an individual, was significant. So I was seeing sort of both of those areas available in the one place.
Yeah.
And then one of the really significant parts that came about early was this clear feeling of the fact that you both cared about me individually, and I could imagine it's everyone.
I'm really glad that came through early. Good, that's important. Carry on. Sorry, I'm
it's
listening.
like you really cared about where I was at and where I wanted to go, and you didn't let me off the hook. So even when, for different reasons, I couldn't get into the studio, and we started setting up regular conversation calls to check in and reset maybe goals or movement for the week. You'll be saying, well, how many walks have you had, or where have you gone? Here's an online yoga class that you can do in your own time. And even things like Chris saying, he knew I have a gym down the road that's much closer than yours, and I do have a membership there. He's like, please get to that Zumba class, please get to the spin class. So kind of like building a tailored movement schedule around individual and just genuine care. Like the check-in, how are you, what's going on? And then I could always update you both and then go, okay, I think we need to do this, this and this.
And reinvent as we go along.
Would you like a window into what your life could look like with Bex and Chris in your corner? They can bring you into an energetic flow, allowing for a better quality of life no matter where you're at in life's journey. Reach out for a 10-minute consult now to discover a life in flow. Sculptandflow.com.au.
And I'm going to ask you a little bit about the yoga part of the journey, obviously, because that's how I've been involved with you more. Can I ask, with that, we've talked a lot about opening up your upper back area. So with that, we've worked on, like, obviously with the whole nature of your podcast, this is how to follow your heart. So where we started with that is the front, obviously, with opening the heart. But then a big part of opening the heart is unlocking the back of the heart, where obviously we can hold a lot of armour there. Would you elaborate a little bit, if you're happy to, on when I talk about armour around the back of the heart space and upper back area, and where that's come from for you in terms of feeling like you're the protector of everybody else in a way that's perhaps at some point down the line has made you put yourself in the background a little bit in terms of following your heart? How has the process helped you in terms of working through solar plexus, obviously just underneath your sternum, and then unlocking back of heart space? Are you happy to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I'll try and elaborate on that.
Thank you.
I think physically I carry a lot of stress and burden in that part of my body. And that
I was just sat up just as like, is this interesting, isn't it? As soon as you think of it, we're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and it might have come about through that physical side of your workstation and or the work you're doing, but a lot of the work we do has this sort of impact potential and goal around it. So a lot of the topics we're often dealing with, I've got a heaviness to them or an urgency to them. I feel like I'm a conduit between an issue and an audience, and I think I've realised that is actually my spot in life where I've landed, and I was obviously meant to be. And in carrying that maybe responsibility, I've created a version of an armour around my physical self to cope with it, which technically wasn't particularly good for me in my well-being and or health. And so I remember when you sort of suggested, let's do this heart space work where I'm actively trying to open that up. And you never know quite how all of these things come together, but it was about 6 months ago, there was a really significant project came into my world, and it's been a ride, to say the least. But I've can't ever discredit that maybe that work's connected, because it was like you're allowing yourself to fully expose your heart space and lead with the heart. And I think I've referenced it as what's your due north. And sometimes in life something happens and you're aligned with your due north. And I think the physical and or mindset and or metaphysical work I've done with you and Chris has been a part of why I was able to do the work at all. Find it and actually finish it, because it was physically challenging, because we were filming up in the Pacific, really close to the equator.
Wow.
With gear and people, and a really significant issue in our mind's eye the whole time, and it was affecting the heart space because you're so impacted by what you're witnessing, which is the issue of plastic pollution coming through the ocean, but also into countries that don't yet have the infrastructure or space to handle it. And there's a lot of people up against that, and there's a lot of people that are pretty worried about what that is and how do we get out of this situation. So to kind of segue across to that, the film is called Voices of the Pacific because we wanted to be a conduit between the issue and an audience.
Yeah, brilliant.
And give voice to not just what the people are going through, but creatures and the environment, and what the Pacifica people call Moana, being our beautiful ocean. So it was tough. And, I had regular calls with yourselves, and you sent me yoga classes to do online. But I would often always factor in, I was just saying to Chris before, off podcast, I kind of felt that you guys had my back and that you cared. And I'd therefore kind of factor in movement. So if there was a way I could go for that extra walk or get in the ocean or do something, it was never not in the story. And I would say before I contacted you 3 years ago, it had all gone. Like, I'm technically a physical person. I grew up on a farm, been a gymnast, I've been a skier. I've been lucky enough to have a physical life.
Yeah.
And something had changed. And so I'm really aiming to rebuild that. So I'm somewhere on that journey, and there's still work to do, but at least know now I can do it.
It gives me joy hearing that. I know that you've been able to utilise what you can through Sculpt and Flow. That if you are away, that you can, have you mentioned online sessions. So I'm really glad you've used those, because no matter where you are, there's still that connection. Just given off what you were just talking about with what's just happened and where you've been, I'd love for you to elaborate. So can you tell us a bit more as to what's just been going on with Rolling Ball, where you've been, what you've been doing with Voices of the Pacific? Are you happy to elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so very recently I was invited to go to Geneva with the Fiji government, because I had connected with them last November at they call the INC meetings, and that was INC 5, and this one was 5.2, because the world had to keep meeting to try and get some agreement around what the treaty might look like. And that treaty is, in theory, meant to assist us with the full life cycle of plastic, so that we can have a look at what chemicals are going into it, how much is getting made, where is it going, how do we all recycle, how do we address where we've arrived as a group, like internationally in 2025, which
just not big stuff then, just little. This is just
the
little
thing,
stuff.
little stuff, but
big stuff. It's incredible.
Yeah, it is a bit. Sometimes pinch yourself. Did that happen? Coming back from Geneva in particular, because you're witnessing something that there is no benchmark for, because there technically isn't, because the world hasn't done that before. But you're watching the world order play out, and you really can't do anything about it except for maybe use your own skills and or interest or connection to bring the story to the world. And that, in theory, is what we would love this film to do. And we've had some recent success in global distributor, giving us an offer. They're going to take it to a market in October and February, with the view that they will be securing television rights into different countries. We've had some festivals show interest, but that all said, it is a bit of an out-of-body experience that is got a fair bit of responsibility tied into it. And you say, how on earth did I end up here? But then you remember that my grandfather spoke to me when I was 8 and warned me that plastic would choke the earth.
I feel you. I really feel you.
And I said, what do you want me to do about that? He said, I just need you to know this will happen. And unfortunately, the trajectory we're all on, it appears that he might be right. So all I can do, because I have somehow landed into a spot with access to the most beautiful nations in the Pacific, and all being supported by some significant people in Australia to bring our narrative in, all I can do and contribute to is try and take that story out to as many people as I can, so we can decide what we want to do about it.
And I'm sure anyone listening will feel this as well. Just how fortunate genuinely the world is to have someone like yourself who is so authentically passionate about what you're doing. And I'm sort of speaking from a complete place of ignorance because I haven't been there. I'm not you, but what I do feel very strongly is that it's more than a wisdom or a connection. I would say it's a deep wisdom that we've talked about and worked on a little bit with your being in tune. Well, obviously we talked about heart space, but also with your intuition and your connection to signs and synchronicities, which we're both smiling because, boy, there's been a few. I won't go into the history of this, but just to kind of introduce it, was it the studio? Was that your granddad that popped in to say hi when the taps went ballistic?
That was my other grandfather.
So can you elaborate a little bit more on what, your connection to, let's call it 5-dimensional. Let's call it the energies that we can feel but we can't necessarily see, and a little bit about the journey there, because that's been really epic, and it takes a lot of you. I mean, you don't need me to tell you this, but a whole lot of guts to trust that, particularly when sometimes you can be up against social opinion or convention that, okay, well, you might be able to talk about signs and synchronicities, but you'll be absolutely bananas if you are going to make you're going to make a massive decision based on your heart space. It's one of those things that we talk about, but when it comes to big decisions, is it really something that we should do if we're in a good frame of mind? Talk a little bit, I don't mind if you go for a few, or just one, if there's one in particular that stands out to you at the moment.
Which one to choose? I'm really feeling into which one I should share, because there's been so much, and it's like being a version of a slipstream and jumping in the current of the river, even in the last 6 months, where so much has happened that I'm going, what is going on here? Or just trying to keep up with it and keep grounded with it, because there seems to be, I'll call it, a lot of protection around anything happening with this piece of work. And I did do some breath work with a friend who really walked with me also in the last year in particular to help me navigate what was going on and a few other things. She and I went to a local area of bush called Glenrock. It's on the coast. It's a beautiful piece of bushland and it's fairly untouched. And we walked down to an old kitchen where the local Awabakal people would have utilised the water and the rocks there. And it's just got this quite a strong energy there. And before we started to do the breath work to process what was going on, I looked up in the tree and there was this giant, powerful owl looking at me. And I said to my friend, you might want to look up. Yeah. And she was just in awe, and so was I. And I can tell you that bird did not stop eyeballing me until I went, okay, well, I'm going now, and walked away. And it felt like it had revealed itself to make sure I knew I had protection, because we were about to go back into one of the other countries to continue this work. And we're meeting new people. People are trusting us enough to open up their homes and their villages without a lot of chance to have a connection before we do that. And that's so significant. And it's a privileged spot where you come in with a camera and you're going to film what's going on. So we were about to head back into a new country that we hadn't been in before. And the owl was there. And it's hard to articulate what that was, but the feeling I had was I was protected. So I felt like I was able to go and do the work.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Seeing as we're along the lines of sort of spirituality and sort of trusting our guts, I've got a couple of little stats here that I thought you might be interested in. I just want to say them to you and see what you think, and with your experience, what your feeling of this is. And this is in relation to people being in touch maybe with the 5-dimensional, and we've worked on that a lot in our training. Maybe when it comes to the crunch, not trusting it, whereas from what I hear you saying, you're using it a lot as a reaffirming. And that happened the other day. I think that I'd sent you something, and you'd had a specific dream, and I sent you something and you said, that's confirmation. And I'm going to take that. I'm not going to ignore it. It's not a coincidence. That's happening for a reason. I'm going to take it. So this research indicates that over 52% of Aussies identify as spiritual. 63% of Aussies believe in miracles. And 27% of Aussies say they've had mystical experiences. So my question there is, what are your feelings on that? And also that your feelings on, I personally find that fairly ironic, and not necessarily just in Australia, but back home in the UK and other countries I've lived in. I would say that a lot of people I've encountered might say they're spiritual, but when you talk about this stuff, it's not. It's also just it's an over there thing. You can talk about it, but you don't make big decisions based on it. You know, that kind of feeling. And sorry, whilst we're on this, I'll just mention it's an interesting statistic that 70% of Aussies have experienced trauma in their lives, which came up actually in the same search as the spiritualness, which I thought, oh, that's interesting, but I'm going to trust it. It's popped up there for a reason. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that, April? I mean, how do you find it in your world and with your team? Do you think people are, they're happy to go with your gut, or do you how's that for you?
Yeah, they are, and it's become a situation where, because so much has transpired, it's now become a scenario where there are some things we don't question, because it's almost like if we've allowed those guiding lights and or signs or influences or coincidences have ended up proving themselves time and time again, that when something comes in, it's not just me now who will clock it and go, that's, I think that there's a northern star, or that there is a friend of mine, she's a legend, she's Irish. I won't name her name, but she knows who she is. She calls them billboards. And she goes, oh, we've just had another billboard, have we? Or we've just got another giant signpost, have we? Oh, that's what that is. Like, when I was telling her all the stuff that had been going on, she
so
goes,
she's recognising it, or she's seeing that in you?
Both. So she was saying, she calls them billboards. Awesome. It's like where, okay, there is no way you can deny that is linked and or...
You've just driven right past, right there, screaming in your face. Yeah.
So I think, to answer the earlier part of your question, I was lucky to grow up in a family that these type of things were discussed, and we were raised Catholic, and I felt every time we would gather in church every Sunday was a chance to be connected to a community and consider something else bigger than us. Even though I didn't probably listen particularly to the detail around what we were being told, there was something energetic around that experience. And then when other things would happen to my family members, there was this conversation around something bigger than us, and or I don't know how to put the words together really, but it was luckily it was a part of my upbringing. It wasn't blocked. And then because it wasn't blocked, I was allowed to let that part of me probably have some oxygen and develop. And then more recently it seems to have gone into a space of being on steroids, partly because I've been absolutely privileged enough to have Aboriginal elders and a Pacifica elder take me under their wing to teach me the old ways, because of situation with my life where there is Aboriginal bloodline on my father's side, which wasn't ever really discussed.
Yeah, right.
But I knew there was something in that, and I knew something was missing. And it's not negative that it was missing, but I just knew there was something going on with me, and what I was picking up on and or experiencing and or what I cared about couldn't be quite explained in my normal day-to-day. And then a few years ago, these elders acknowledged me and identified me and have guided me through a lot of teachings and or gatherings to understand that part of myself more, and know that that's in the mix with this, added on to the Celtic background that my mum and dad have in their lineage, and the pairing together is what's coming out in the work, and or being able to be open to guidance and signs from something that's not in our 2D realm. Yeah. And honestly, just allow it to have a hand in what we're doing, because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is only going to hopefully impact the collective in a positive way. And it might be the environment or a person or a group. So if we can have that guidance and protection, I think we're going to be able to do a better job.
Absolutely. And, thank you for all that you do. And I hope that, well, I know, I don't hope, I know that you're going to keep doing what you do, because, and I, as your coach as well, and I think you know this, but I do wholeheartedly believe in your Dharma, and I hope you do, more to the point, and keep trusting it. So Thank you for joining us, April. We do really appreciate it. Follow your heart, you are, and I hope that people listening can feel inspired by this conversation, because April, you are an inspiration, and thank you for what you do.
Thanks, Bex.
My pleasure. Thanks, April.
Before we go, I just would like to have that chance to thank you both, because you're absolutely a key part of what has happened in the most recent times, but in that rebuilding journey in the last 3 years. And I just feel lucky I found you. So,
same.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to make a change in your life? Have more energy? Be more present? Get results that will flow through to every aspect of your life? Live in flow with Sculpt and Flow. Reach out today, sculptandflow.com.au.
I hope you really enjoyed today's episode as much as I did, and really hopefully can learn from April as much as I can or have, to really open your heart and follow your heart, to follow your dreams, make it happen. In our next episode, Philip McIntyre will be joining us, and Philip is the Professor of Communication and Media at the University of Newcastle, although that feels like quite a small intro for Philip McIntyre, because there are many strings to this man's bow, including being an absolutely amazing musician. I'm not even going to go into the rest right now, but with Philip, we are going to talk about how he got mobile with Sculpt and Flow Fitness. We will talk about how he found us in the first place, considering he was not in a particular frame of mind to be looking for any type of training at that stage of his life. We're going to have a chat about his connection of physical movement to academic practice, given that Philip is a intellectual, and also the benefits of him getting mobile, being over 70 years of age and working and playing with his grandkids, and also riding his bike, which he hadn't done, I believe, for some time.
Proudly sponsored by Align Accounting, Newcastle's fresh approach to accounting, and Sage Painting, Newcastle's award-winning painting company.
Change your thoughts, transform your life with Sculpt and Flow. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. Please rate 5 stars wherever you listen. Changing your life with Bex Aswani and Chris Massey for Sculpt and Flow.
Proudly sponsored by Align Accounting, Newcastle's fresh approach to accounting, and Sage Painting, Newcastle's award-winning painting company.